All right, everyone, welcome back to What We Are Watching, episode 17. I'm going to say that's right because I have to think about it in my head. Episode 17. Brand, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of crazy things happening. Now, this is going to be on the regular feed, but this is the last episode on the regular feed. We're not going away with the show, but update your bookmarks, subscribe. We've got our own feed now, what we are watching. So if you type what we're watching into your YouTube search and bring up the one that says W3, kind of like the old Buffalo Wild Wings logo, but it's not that at all. It's what we're watching. As always, here with my co-host, TJ, how are you this evening?
I'm great because I'm with you. It's I get to close out an outstanding Taco Titty Tuesday with my main man Joey talking Sopranos and what we're watching. To all the fans, if you haven't subscribed already to the new channel, please do. An episode entitled "Why We Watch" is coming. So that right there, that's something. That's something to watch because it was definitely a lot of fun doing that with you yesterday, and everybody got to hear how I answer my door.
It
So
is a special Easter egg. You won't have to go hunting for it, though. You do find out how TJ answers his door. It's like right in the middle of the episode.
right,
So even if you did want to watch the rest of the episode, we really wish you would. But if you forward to the part where TJ just disappears and I'm starting to talk, you'll find out how he answers his door. But that's okay. That is okay. Just your moment of levity before we get into the heaviness of these Sopranos episodes.
yes,
I was scrolling through Facebook. You get into the reels of different shows and stuff, and it was a scene from The Office where they're discussing whoever versus whomever of
yeah,
when it's appropriate. And at first,
yeah.
Michael thinks it's never appropriate, like it's not really a thing.
It's not really a word.
And Oscar gets involved in the conversation. Do you remember what Michael says?
No, give it to me.
He looks at the camera and says, "Not a native speaker."
Like, cause they sounded really intelligent. It's Hume when it's the pejorative. Like, oh snap! Let me find out that not a native speaker. That's awesome.
And Toby breaks it down, and Michael's like, "Nobody ever asked you anything ever."
Anything ever. Found out today though, since you mentioned the office really quickly, they do an office themed 5K in Scranton every year.
Oh,
I didn't
when
know
is
that.
it? Do you know?
It actually just happened last month. Our friend of the show, owner of Kickstop Customs, shared the article with me, and I didn't have the opportunity to read the article, but I did look at the pictures and see the headlines. Like, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome
That
because
is
a lot
awesome.
of the people are dressed up like office characters as they do this 5K. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. But
Would you
again,
would would you order a big pasta dish right before you ran the
definitely
5K?
not. Definitely not. I am not trying to carbo load, as Michael said. Um, no, can I tell you? I've never had Parmesan. Like, was it like chicken parm or like
Chicken
eggplant
parm?
parm or
Yeah.
yeah, any of the white sauces, chicken
Any of
Alfredo.
the Alfredo sauces.
Yeah,
Okay.
never had
Okay.
any of the white sauces, man.
It is an experience. I would recommend it, but it is one of those things like I wouldn't fill up on bread beforehand, and you definitely don't want to do anything like running afterwards. That's
Definitely not.
a that's a eat, let me get the check and then let me make it home as quickly as possible because I'm going to pass out.
Man,
That is what is happening. But we are in the very end of season 5, and in this episode, we're actually going to get the first episode of season 6, part 1, because they split season 6 into 2 parts. And if you stream Sopranos, if you buy the DVDs, which I have, It still says that. Season 6, part 1, season 6, part 2.
Part
So
two.
that is canon. But we're going to start here with one of the stranger episodes to me. The Test Dream is the 11th episode of season 5. And it is the 63rd overall episode of the series, written by David Chase and Matt Weiner and directed by Alan Coulter. Originally aired on May 16th, 2004. After they have sex, Tony's girlfriend Valentina accidentally sets the sleeve of her kimono on fire and ends up badly burned. Thoughts?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Because
It's not funny. It's not funny. But I promise, I said it today, that escalated quickly. Because I mean, she
and
goes,
again around heat and all of that. Yeah.
bro, they're having that conversation after having some raucous lovemaking like only Tony Soprano can. And then she wants to, I want some eggs. You want some eggs? Like, and I can't, that was the best Valentina impression I could do. You want
I
some
knew
eggs?
I know what you were doing.
That's
Yeah.
what I was going for. And then yeah, to go from her and him having this back and forth, which she was starting to see, I guess him slowly but surely pulling away
Mm-hmm.
because she got a little amped right before the sleeve caught on fire. And then it's just like, well, now she's not yelling anymore at him. Now she's just yelling.
And now she's just yelling. Yep.
So yeah, all I can say to that escalated quickly.
After Tony visits her in a hospital burn unit, he drops in on Tony B at his mother's house. Although Tony notices that his cousin is behaving erratically, he does not know that Tony B has just learned that Angela, his friend and former cellmate, has been murdered by Phil and Billy Leotardo. Tony B tells his cousin he has to take his twin sons to their mother early, and Tony leaves. Things are ramping up, always with that Phil and Billy.
Phil is definitely a problem. What I will say, it was obvious to our Tony whenever he got to the house. At no point in time could Tony B sit down. He's looking around. He's yelling at the kids. Hey Tony, you want a Coke? Nah, I'm fine. Ma, get Tony a Coke. Like that whole exchange was weird, and I feel like if Tony needed any more alarms to go off, that was it.
And he's thinking, look, I'm trying to keep all of this together. And it's the inability to get good help.
Yeah.
Tony checks himself into a luxury suite at the Plaza Hotel and nearly runs into Dr. Melfi. When evening comes, aboard, Tony starts drinking and calls Charmaine, to whom he is attracted. Running through TV channels, he sees an advert for an escort agency and makes a call for an Asian girl. After he steals a newspaper placed at the door of the neighboring suite, he gets a voicemail from Silvio informing him about Angelo's murder. Tony immediately tries to call Tony B, who is already on the move and not answering his phone. Tony then frantically calls Tony B's casino, Aunt Quintina, and even the Bada Bing, telling everyone to let Tony B know he is looking for him. The prostitute arrives, and at some point, Tony falls asleep. In his long, vivid dream, Tony encounters the deceased Carmine Lupertazzi and receives a phone call telling him to kill somebody. Next, he sits in Melfi's office and is counseled by his deceased ex-Guma, Gloria Trillo. Tony then finds himself riding in the back seat of a 59 Cadillac Eldorado, being driven by his long-dead father, Johnny Boy Soprano, and accompanied by the also deceased Big Pussy and Mikey Palmise. Mikey briefly turns into Artie. When Tony asks where they are going, Pussy, who is now turned into Ralph Cifaretto, turns around and says, "We're driving you to the job." So what must Tony be thinking at this point?
Well, I mean, when you're in what is obviously a fever dream, like he's encountering everyone he's killed, and in Artie's situation, somebody he was very close to,
Mm-hmm.
had ample reason to, you know. But even then, having, I think Tony kind of felt guilty about putting the moves on Charmaine, which is part of the reason why he saw Artie
Right.
in the dream. Because what we realize is this isn't Tony's first time calling her, or I've got that inclination, because she says, "Whoever this is, you need to stop doing this," which means this isn't the first time she's gotten a call where somebody doesn't say anything.
Right.
Um, so him being in that car, and even the part with Carmine was weird, because Carmine's laying in the bed. Tony doesn't know that Carmine's there at first, so he thinks he's still with the chick. So when he rolls over and realizes it's Carmine, he freaks out, and then Carmine hears the phone, and now he seems scared, which is not something that we ever really saw from him, even when he was having a stroke.
Right.
Is that burnt hair?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't seem scared. He's just, is that burnt hair? And then he's down. But he
Right.
wasn't terrified. But yeah, so in that, it was weird, and we get more dream sequence later. We'll plant that seed for you.
Yeah. The dream cuts to Tony waking up at his house and preparing to go to dinner with Carmela to meet Finn's parents at Vesuvio. When they finally arrive, Finn's father is the deceased detective Vin Makazian, while his mother is played by Annette Bening. Finn occasionally turns into AJ during the course of the dinner. Next, Tony's teeth start to fall out while Finn's father starts singing Three Times a Lady. Tony tries and fails to get Benning's attention. In the restroom, Tony reaches behind a toilet tank looking for a gun, which is not there, and encounters Vin. Tony hears shots firing outside and sees Tony B shooting Phil in his car. The crowd blames and chases Tony, who is shot at by Lee Harvey Oswald during the pursuit. He escapes in the Cadillac with help from Artie. Tony looks in the back seat and sees the deceased Richie April and Gigi Castone. So now he is
So
really,
yeah.
he is really out there. Yeah.
So the part that got me on this one, like at this point, your subconscious is telling you it's your fault. Like Phil wouldn't be dead if you had just taken care of Tony like you were supposed to. So at this point in time, I think he's convincing himself, you need to take care of this, or it's only going to get worse with New York.
Mm-hmm. Tony is then seen having wild sets with Charmaine while her husband Artie coaches him along. The dream jumps suddenly to Tony sitting on top of Pyomai in his living room, with Carmela allowing him to return home on the condition that he get rid of the racehorse. At the end of the dream, Tony is confronted by Mr. Molinaro, his high school football coach, who criticizes Tony's lifestyle and points out how he didn't have to be a criminal and live with all the stress that comes with being one. When Tony tries to shoot Molinaro, his gun malfunctions and the bullets seemingly melt into feces in his hands. The coach continues to taunt him about not being prepared until Tony awakens with a start. Shortly afterward, Tony receives a visit from Christopher, who informs him that Tony B has killed Billy and wounded Phil. As it is not dawn yet, Tony goes back to bed and calls Carmela. Tony cancels a fishing trip with AJ and tells her that he had one of my Coach Molinaro dreams. They joke with each other, and Tony seems glad to learn she ate at Vesuvio with only her girlfriends before asking her if the sun has come up where she is.
And that's how he started the conversation as well, right? Like,
Right.
is the sun up where you're at? And that, honestly, whenever I saw that conversation, it was very relaxing, because that conversation felt like home.
Right.
Like, you understand what turmoil they're in, with everything going on, and still, for them, having the conversation like they did, it just seemed natural. So I
Right.
enjoyed that little excerpt right there.
Nice. So, a little trivia in the episode Commendatore, Annalisa tells Tony that she collects her nails to avoid them falling into her enemy's hands. In mergers and acquisitions, Carmela finds Valentina's nail on Tony's clothes and leaves it on the table. This possibly could have been an Easter egg, as she is later caught on fire. Phil wears a gray sweatsuit in the dream when he is shot. Coincidentally, in the episode Made in America, he's wearing the same outfit. So a little tease. When AJ switches places with Finn, Annette Bening is talking about how he would never amount to much, possibly making a subconscious reference to how Tony perceives AJ. All right, folks. When you talk about episodes of The Sopranos, you talk about the college road trip, you talk about the Pine Barrens.
Pine Barrens.
But one of those you hear people talk about a lot, even if you have never watched The Sopranos. This was like this for me. I knew that something big was happening in this episode, and you kind of know where it's heading. But then you're like, are they going to or not? But we finally reached long-term parking.
Shouts out to Wong and what was it? Wasn't Wong watching long-term parking in She-Hulk?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely. The 12th episode of season 5, 64th overall episode of the series, written by Terrence Winter and directed by Tim Van Patten, originally aired on May 23rd, 2004. So they went deep into May with this season. I guess it's because they knew it was going to be a while before they came back.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Adriana learns from a doctor that she has been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. Elsewhere, the Soprano family is forced to have a sit-down with Johnny and the Lupertazzi family over the murder of Billy by Tony B. Tony Soprano expresses his condolences to Phil and assures him that his cousin acted alone and that his whereabouts are unknown. Phil angrily threatens to kill one of Tony's own family, which causes him to be led away from the table. Johnny threatens to kill one of Tony's other cousins in Tony D's place, at which Christopher takes offense and protests. I wonder, this is not what he said. I wonder if he said, I'm not really his nephew. I'm actually related to Carmela.
Right.
His version of, this is not my office.
That is the first. Well, since we talk about cousins, I'm not his. And then just walk out. But no, look, Chris, look, I felt for Christopher in that moment because I'm like, bro, are you really talking about me like I'm not sitting? No, now, and I would have reacted. Now hold the F up now. You're not going to threaten me like this. I'm just sitting here like that. Yeah, that's great. I like Chris. That's all right.
Yeah, that he could have jumped up. Which one you want? There's so he started listing them off. He's probably thinking in the back of his mind, like, I knew I said for the longest time them books was closed. Man, I wish they had remained closed a little bit longer. Although he's supposed to be a man now, he's not supposed to be touched.
And that's it.
If they get Billy, though, it's all
well, but that's just it. A made man can be touched if you get the green light. Because they took out and I'm drawing a blank on his name because they messed up his tombstone.
Oh yeah.
No,
it wasn't. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like it just happened, right? But because he took out Phil's guy and because he killed Billy, I think John would have given the green light for Phil to kill, honestly, whomever he wanted.
Absolutely. And
outside of Tony.
That's part of the reason I believe that they Phil had to be led away because, Johnny warns Tony to deliver Tony B on a spit. The deaths of Billy and Angelo get little Carmine spooked about the reprisal killings. He announces his withdrawal from the confrontation with Johnny to his associates, who are openly disappointed. Chris descends into alcoholism and is punished by Tony for bungling a cigarette smuggling operation. Back home, he rants about Tony's treatment of him and what he sees as Tony's favoritism towards Tony B. We talked about that the last time, him crying coming
on the
home
way home.
because he was bonding with Tony B until Tony shows up, and
Until
then
Tony shows up.
they gang up on him. Yeah. The diatribe leaves Adriana in tears. On the Jersey Shore, school children on a field trip find a dead body washed ashore. It is later identified as Gilbert Nieves. FBI agents watching the Crazy Horse observe Adriana behaving suspiciously with a garbage bag. Upon learning that the club was recently investigated, they decide to bring Adriana in for questioning. Later, Tony has dinner with Carmela at Vesuvio, where he tries to convince her to allow him back home. Hesitant, Carmela asks Tony to front her $600,000 to begin building a spec house on a piece of promising real estate. Tony agrees and is told that he can return. Tony then visits his hospitalized girlfriend, Valentina, and breaks up with her. Smooth operator, that Tony Soprano.
I just want you to know the hospital bills, your medicine, forget about it. Because that
you're covered.
You're covered. That's the consolation prize, right? I got everything you need. It's covered. I'm like, yeah, get out of here, Tony.
That's thinking, oh my God, all of this, and I've got to pay this hospital bill. I know what you're thinking. Let me put your mind at ease.
All you have to worry about is healing. I'll take care of all the other stuff. Oh, and by the way, we're through. Get out of here. I'm going back to my wife. Bro, Tony, again, he's shown throughout the series up until this point, fans, I hope you're gathering this as well. He cares about number one.
Absolutely.
He cares about number one. And I mean, you get constant reminders. So, yeah.
But not that I'm excusing it, but considering who his mother was, who his uncle is, even when he was in his right mind, what did he do? Oh, he's telling somebody, how dare you talk about that in my own home? When he said maybe we should have to, but then he goes over to Tony's, you were never a varsity athlete.
You were never a varsity athlete.
And we're constantly reminded, that Johnny was a saint. You can never be like you.
Never be like your brother. You'll never hear anything bad said about Johnny. But no, so you're 1,000% right. We're not excusing the behavior, but it is real easy learned behavior to see how he's come up. And then taking into consideration when you realize a couple years ago, his mom and his uncle tried to have him killed. Mm-hmm. So.
And him screaming as they're taking her away. She was smiling. You saw her.
She was smiling. And she was. She actually was. She had a smile on her face. A psychiatrist.
No.
What are you talking about?
Uh-huh.
No. What are you doing?
AJ was walking back home like, she must be hard of hearing because I know I'm not crazy. He started to dap himself for like 5 seconds. I'm not crazy. I know what he's doing. I'm gonna eat this piece of fruit.
You don't know what you're talking about.
So Tony starts receiving silent phone calls, which he suspects are from Tony B. Tony returns home and has dinner with Carmela and AJ. Shortly afterwards, he receives a call from Tony B, who apologizes for putting him in a predicament with the Lupertazzi. Sorry, I put you in that predicament. I invited us over to their house for dinner, and then I didn't show. That's
a predicament, bro. That's a predicament. You look. If I come to you and I say, "Hey, Joy, let's go out of town for the weekend. We're gonna go," and you put up the money for the Airbnb, and then something comes up, I don't show up. Dang, Joey, I'm sorry for putting you in that predicament. You and I are both single, and I set up 2 blind dates for us. and then I go and then I find out that I like the one that you're with, and that's a bit of a predicament. Killing a guy and then lying to you about it, and then going and killing another guy and then maiming and yeah, like, bro, that's more than a predicament. That's downright tomfoolery.
The foolery.
The foolery.
Tony agrees to look after Tony B's sons and admits that he had passed out from a panic attack on the night he was unable to prevent Tony B's arrest. Tony B seems unfazed by the revelation, but asks Tony if everything he did for him was because of guilt over the incident. Tony traces the call from a business near their Uncle Pat's farm near Kinderhook, New York. Upon being confronted by the FBI, Adriana tells them how Matush and his partner, both drug dealers, used her office to fax some documents when they were held at knife point by Nieves over a purchase of cocaine. The dealers overpowered Nieves, and Matush stabbed him to death with his own knife. Adriana, who has been high on ecstasy, stumbled upon the scene and helped the duo remove the body and the evidence. Agent Sanseverino convinces Adriana to cooperate, but she refuses to wear a wire and asks for a chance to persuade Chris to join her in witness protection. Chief Cubatoso allows this, but comments the Bureau will not be able to protect her without a wire. Adriana admits to Chris that she has cooperated with the FBI. He initially reacts violently, but calms down and seems to agree with her plan to move away. However, while getting gas for his Hummer H2, he observes a desperately poor family in the parking lot, their meager possessions strapped to the roof of a rundown car. Adriana later gets a call from Tony, who claims Chris tried to commit suicide and that Silvio is on his way to take her to the hospital. While riding in Silvio's car, it becomes clear that Tony sent Silvio to kill her. After driving into the woods, Silvio shoots Adriana as she tries to crawl away. Afterwards, Chris packs her possessions into a suitcase and tosses it into an industrial marshland in Newark. He drives her Ford Thunderbird to Newark Liberty International Airport, where he leaves it in the long-term parking area and walks away. Thoughts?
Bro, so your synopsis of what you just said left out one major part for me.
Okay.
Okay. So, first off, and I am not an advocate for domestic violence at all, but Chris beat the shit out of her like that. Like,
Yeah.
he really went to town more than he had done before. And he's sitting there screaming, "What have you done to us?" Because he recognized that the likelihood of them killing him just because of what she did was high. It's high. So, for that to happen, Chris sees his, poor doppelganger. And then when Adriana gets the call, the very next thing we see is her driving away. So for a moment,
yeah.
for a moment, you think, boom, she's not going
left.
to the FBI. She just left. Maybe
You're right.
she has a chance. And then when you realize, gotcha, she is in Seal's passenger seat. So you know what's going to happen. And, it's not until, I believe it's not until they go down that secluded road. Because all the while, Seal is doing his best, how do you do, acting impression to talk to her. Oh, I stopped to get some food, but we just need to go ahead and get down there. And I'm just like, okay, like all this sounds legit.
Right.
But then they go down that road, and there's no hospital down a dirt road.
And I think you're right. That's when she realizes.
I think that's exactly.
Because I think if it was Tony that came and got her, she would know. I think if Paulie came and got her, she would know. Because it's Seal.
Seal deals with the women.
Right.
Seal deals with the women. But just to go again to show you how amazing and polarizing the show is, this is this term is known as Adriana-ing somebody, and it was actually referenced in another show, Sons of Anarchy, that Adriana, the young lady, actually played a character in that show. Somebody had gotten out of pocket, so they thought that they were going to be Adriana'd.
Yeah. And she has talked about this scene, like they had let her know, like this is what's going to happen. Excuse me. And she was thankful that they let her do it um, with Van Zant and and all of that. And she's like, she kind of always wanted it in the back of her head. Maybe there was a chance that he would let her go and
Right.
all of that, but she was talking about being very emotional, which I can get. Like Adriana wasn't in every episode, she wasn't in all of that, but she, you know, she was that major influence throughout the time
Her
for Christopher.
her character was heart. Her character was emotion. I can't tell you one episode that she was in that didn't pull on some heartstrings, be it happiness, anger, gluttony, addiction. There's so many things that she represented in the show. So for her to go the way that she did, begging for her life, trying to crawl on the opposite side, and not one point in time did she lock the door.
Right.
Which that would have been my first thing: lock the door and try and give myself some time. But it was tough. So hearing her cry, please, no, 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 like that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough. Again, when you look at this show, if you go back and we look, what has Adriana really done?
Right.
Honestly, that
Right.
would make you say she deserved what she got. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like there are people around her that did some horrible things, but if you watch her, all she really did was try and love the wrong person.
Right.
And if nothing else, folks, let that trying to love the wrong person will get you shot in the woods.
And even before that, she was literally being torn apart with the ulcerative colitis. Like
Yes, that's it.
if you've ever just had like a bad stomach ache, could you imagine like an ulcer? And
Dude.
it was just tearing her apart.
And it's
But we're
and it's
not
all because of what she knew and because of what she was doing with the FBI. Man, I felt for her. I felt for her.
right. Mind you, we're not done with the episode.
No, we're not.
After word gets to New Jersey that Johnny has become Carmine's successor as the head of the New York family, Tony meets the new boss in a vacant lot near the Manhattan Bridge and offers to give up Tony B's location, asking that he be killed quickly so that he does not suffer. Johnny does not accept his offer, telling Tony that Phil is going to do it his way. Upon hearing this, Tony curses at Johnny and says nothing will happen to his cousin. Later, Tony goes to the Bada Bing and finds Chris watching Three Amigos in the back room, quickly realizing that he is high. Chris admits to snorting heroin because he cannot take the pain of losing Adriana, telling Tony he loved her. Tony loses his composure and beats Chris. San Severino meets with Cubitoso and Harris about Adriana's disappearance, believing she could have fled. Cubitoso is not convinced. She storms out of the office. Cubitoso tells Harris that since Matush is sending money home to Pakistan, he should pull the counterterrorism card and take the case from the local police. Meanwhile, Carmela and Tony survey the land on which Carmela plans to build her spec house, which coincidentally looks similar to the area in which Adriana was killed. Tony, lost in thoughts, sits on a tree stump with Carmela standing at his side.
So correct me if I'm wrong, my guy, because Phil, Johnny Sack, and Tony had a lot of meetings by that bridge, but isn't this once Lil Carmine backed out, the very next meeting? So this is the meeting we're talking about between Johnny Sack and Tony. Johnny says, oh, by the way, we're not going to meet like this anymore. It's unseemly. Like he didn't he? Isn't that the meeting where he essentially says he's not going to meet with Tony under the bridge anymore? Which I
Right.
thought that was what caused Tony to, that along with obviously everything that he was. I just felt like John was being a little bit of a prick.
Oh,
With
absolutely.
with that one. And I thought, along with saying Phil's going to do it his way, I thought he was going to say, I thought he was also saying, in these meetings, we're not going to do like this anymore. It's unseemly. So I was just like, John's definitely feeling himself.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. The episode's title is not a reference to a line in the previous episode where the Plaza Hotel's valet asked Tony if he wants short or long term parking. It's actually in reference to where Chris parked Adriana's Thunderbird at the airport. I didn't think it was anything else. I got all this
Basically.
from the Sopranos wiki, and I'm like, if you'd have put a gun to my head, I could have told you what the valet asked Tony in the previous episode. But apparently, that's what a lot of people thought. And I'm like,
Which,
they kind of make it obvious though from where Chris drops off the car.
yep.
So then this is the episode where I had a very unique perspective on a character.
Let me
All
hear it.
due respect, the 13th episode and season finale of season 5, the 65th overall episode of the series, written by David Chase, Robin Green, and Mitchell Burgess, and directed by John Patterson, originally aired on June the 6th, 2004. Upon reclaiming his brother Billy's body from the morgue, Phil demands that Johnny retaliate against the New Jersey mob. Raymond Curto continues to provide information to the FBI, unaware that Adriana has been killed for also turning informant. At Raymond's birthday dinner, Tony delivers a speech urging the family to put up a united front. However, other mobsters express their disgruntlement. Vito doesn't want to die for a bullshit cause, while Larry Boyd Barisi laments Tony's favoritism towards his blood relatives. Meanwhile, Tony B is hiding out at Uncle Pat's vacated Kinderhook, New York farmhouse and sleeps with a local woman. Christopher disposes of Adriana's last remaining possessions. Carmela calls looking for her, and Chris bluntly announces that they broke up and she left town. Carmela is shocked, tries to assure her cousin that he'll find someone else. And I'm sure Chris is like yelling at the walls. Did you hear that? I'm her cousin. Phil tries to track down Chris as an alternate target of his revenge, noting his closeness to Tony. Chris witnesses Phil threatening his mother for information on his whereabouts. Ultimately, Chris decides to go into hiding with the help of Benny, but Phil ends up beating and fracturing Benny's skull with his cane. Benny winds up in intensive care, where Tony visits him. Tony's spending a lot of time at the hospital lately.
A lot of time at the hospital, bro. I felt bad for Benny because Benny didn't ask for any of that.
Benny did not, and he beats the hell out of Benny. You think Valentina says, "Don't worry, Tony's going to cover all of this for you, but you two are not going to see each other anymore." After Tony leaves, Eugene suggests that they look for payback in Brooklyn. Vito says that Tony himself should be taken out if he gives such an order. Tony goes to Uncle Junior for advice, but he is too saddled by dementia. He then goes to Dr. Melfi, but she is unable to offer much advice since he cannot go into detail about his situation. She does remind him, however, that Tony's concern for Tony B comes primarily from his feelings of guilt over his role in his cousin's imprisonment. Silvio informs Tony of the growing discontent in the family and asserts that he is shielding Tony B to resist pressure from Johnny, an idea that Tony angrily rejects.
Hey,
Tony
look.
visits Holly. Now, go ahead.
Now, Phil, this is that first real episode I feel like where we're seeing essentially everybody against Tony.
Mm.
You know, everybody is saying he should give him up. Like, what is all this about? So when Phil comes to him, not Phil, when Seal comes to him to try and be, again, he's the consigliere. That's his role, to try and be the voice of reason, even when you're saying something that the boss don't want to hear. So he tried. So when he came in, this will be remembered, and anybody who does not support it, we'll handle that later. I mean, essentially, that's the message that you get from Tony. Anybody that does not support my message, we can handle that later. Don't even worry about it.
And then we get, in a very heavy episode, we get a moment of likeness. Tony visits Paulie, having heard he is among those dissatisfied with his leadership. There he discovers the portrait of himself with his horse Pyomai, which Tony had wanted destroyed after the horse's death. Unbeknownst to Tony, Paulie had kept the painting and offered it to change Tony's clothes from a business suit to a colonial general. When Tony demands to know why he had him painted as a lawn jockey, Paulie says that he did it out of sincere admiration for Tony as a leader. Tony pauses, but then rips the painting off the wall and puts it in a dumpster. As he throws it away, he stares at the general's uniform and the sword. When Tony B returns to the farmhouse from an errand, Tony suddenly appears with a pump-action shotgun and kills him. Tony then informs Phil and Johnny where Tony B can be found. Phil arrives later expecting to exact his revenge, only to find the body where Tony left him. Later that morning, Johnny calls Tony to tell him that Tony B's death didn't solve a thing. Tony agrees to meet Johnny the following morning to settle the family's feud. He instructs Chris to bury Tony B's body and questions him about whether he said anything to Adriana about Matthew Bevilacqua or Ralph Cifaretto that she could have repeated to the FBI. Chris still feels betrayed by Adriana, but says that he was careful not to reveal any information related to the murders. He further assures Tony that he is staying sober and exercising to prove his worth. The two get emotional, hug, and shed tears about their recent losses. AJ plans a party with a friend, and they end up making $300 each after expenses and drinks. When Carmela and Tony learn about his new business scheme, Carmela reveals that AJ asked his guidance counselor which colleges would be suitable for studying event planning. Carmela also says that AJ spends all his time watching the DVD of the movie 54, a biopic about Studio 54 founder Steve Rubell, which worries Tony because Rubell was a homosexual. I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
That's what he's worried about.
The Sopranos find some solace in the fact that AJ is at least fired up about something. Tony meets Johnny at his New Jersey house and offers a percentage of Tony B's Bloomfield Avenue casino as a peace offering to Phil. At the moment the feud is settled, Tony looks over Johnny's shoulder and sees armed men approaching outside. Tony flees, but Johnny is arrested as the FBI raid the house. Tony throws his handgun away into the snow and navigates the neighborhood to avoid the feds. A few hours later, Tony calls his lawyer, Neil Mink, who informs him that Johnny was betrayed by Jimmy Petrill. Mink advises Tony to be happy since he was not mentioned in the indictment. When Tony finally arrives home, Carmela notices his unkempt appearance and asks what happened to him. Now, let me say this. I am not a Johnny Sack fan. Have never been a Johnny Sack fan. But folks, if you put forth the effort in life that Johnny Sack puts to try to get away from those FBI agents, homeboy was smoking. He's not in great health. You know his wife doesn't feed him well. She's trying to lose weight. But he's like, you're not going to get me. You're going to work for getting me.
Oh, you definitely going to work. Like,
you're going to work for it. I'm like, wow.
Those fancy shoes in that icy weather did not matter. This man was trying everything to get away. And he is completely surrounded. Bro, y'all are going to tackle me. I'm not walking anywhere with
like,
y'all. Like, this is
you're
going to
gonna
work.
need every single one of y'all. I'm gonna make you work for it.
I'm going to make all y'all work on this one.
And he did. And he did. Yeah.
And he definitely did. This episode ending the way it did, I thought it was a trip because, again, just the last time they met, Johnny Sack was a bit of a dick. So for him now to be willing to meet with Tony at his home, and then for it to go the way that it did, I talk about karma to the nth degree. And I remembered our deceased friend's name, Joey P.
Joey Peeps. That was the one that he got his foot ran over, right? Isn't that who he?
Tony B got his foot
Tony
ran
B.
over.
Yeah.
When and Sil and the boys just put Peeps on the gravestone, and the mom was furious. She was so hot. So then Johnny Sack was so pissed off. Like, everybody was hot. Peeps. That's not Peeps.
That also reminds me. Do you remember when they put on the what was it, the street fair for the Saint, and they're like, "This is all that you got? You didn't go for the so and so."
Where's his crown?
I forget how much that was. So much more.
Where's his crown? They were so devastated. I'm sorry. It's not funny because I know what that's supposed to represent. I know what it's supposed to represent. So I'm with y'all. I'm watching it, and they were, and it's all because of Paulie. It's all because of Paulie. That's the reason that I'm laughing, because it's all because of Paulie. But again, we haven't gotten there yet. I'm sorry, y'all. We haven't gotten there yet. Have we?
Have we not gotten there yet? I thought we had.
Have we gotten there?
It all runs into. If not, folks, that's what you have to look forward to. We hadn't spoiled anything.
No, we really haven't. I just said it was Paulie's fault. A lot of stuff is Paulie's fault.
It's along the same lines as Peeps. Peeps.
Peeps.
I did 20 years.
His name is Joseph DeTrulio. Peeps. It's not like you have like this, like your name being something powerful like Frederick Douglass, but your friends called you Slutty Steve. So when it comes time for you to get buried, Slutty Steve is what they put on your gravestone. Like, here lies Slutty Steve.
Or those cakes that people decorate for graduations and stuff, and you see them and like put congratulations and underneath that, and they write that part
out. That's it. So yes, here lies Peeps.
So now we fast forward almost 2 years, but we've arrived at members only. The first episode of part 1 of season 6, the 66th overall episode of the series, written by Terrence Winter and directed by Tim Van Patten. It originally aired on March the 12th, 2006. Nearly 2 years have passed since Johnny Sack's arrest. Vito Spatafore has gotten thinner and is now a spokesperson for a weight loss company. Janice Soprano is raising a daughter with Bobby Bacala, who has taken up model railroading as a hobby.
Bobby B.
Eugene Pontecorvo and his wife inherit $2 million from his aunt. Meadow Soprano continues her relationship with Finn DeTrolio. Raymond Curto exercises on a treadmill and later dies of a stroke. AJ Soprano is now attending college. Adriana Lacerva is remembered by a worrying Carmela. Tony Soprano helps Uncle Junior locate a large amount of money Junior thinks he buried in his backyard 30 years before. Phil Leotardo Now, the acting boss of the Lupertazzi crime family performs day-to-day tasks for the imprisoned Johnny Sack. After dining at a Chinese restaurant in Mill Basin, Brooklyn, Hess Rapkin and his son-in-law Eli Kaplan are assaulted by Lupertazzi associates, causing Eli to also be the victim of a hit and run when he steps into the middle of the street and gets struck by a passing New York City medallion taxi. At Hess's behest, Tony tries to reach out directly to Johnny through his optometrist brother-in-law, Anthony Infante, but Johnny is too concerned with his immediate family's financial trouble. There's a lot going on.
What? What? Oh,
Tony,
you just reminded me.
what?
The chicory. The fucking chicory. It hasn't happened yet. But I'm now, you reminded me of the brother-in-law. I completely forgot about him for a second.
Tony, Vito, and Christopher Moltisanti, now a capo in the DeMeo crime family, meet Phil and Jerry the hairdo Torsiano behind the bada bing. Disputes between Tony and Phil are resolved, and it's revealed that the New York associates were protecting Jerry's area and did not know Eli associated with the Soprano. They agree to compensate Eli $50,000. After the meeting, Tony observes to Chris that Phil has stopped being openly hostile and more open to compromise since becoming acting boss. Chris remains wary. Remember, Phil once wanted him dead. That would make me wary as well.
Yep.
I'm totally on Chris's side.
Only got to threaten me once, buddy.
Vito tells certain people that he could take over the family if anything were to happen to Tony, since he's the best earner. And he tells everybody that.
Everybody.
He's working everyone.
God forbid something happens to Tony.
God forbid, yeah.
God forbid.
But Eugene and his wife aspire to use their inheritance to move to Florida. Tony reminds Eugene that he took an oath that he'll consider letting him retire. After Eugene kills a man who was in debt to Chris and gives Tony his cut of the inheritance, Silvio Dante informs him that Tony has denied his request. That's a no-go. That's a no-go.
That's a no-go. Not going to happen.
Unbeknownst to the family, Eugene is a reluctant informant for the FBI, which has also refused to let him move to Florida.
It's not going to happen, Eugene. It's not going to happen. I'm like, I felt really, really bad for that guy because I'm like, you are being told no by everybody. Like, you got a once-in-a-lifetime amount of money to completely change your family's life. And obviously, when we find out why they want to move specifically to Florida, the whole family side of it, it's like, it had to feel heavy for him. It had to feel heavy.
After arguing with his wife and learning his son is using heroin, Eugene looks over a family photo album and hangs himself. Now, I'm going to put forth something that I read. I'm sure you read this too. This, some people have speculated, really sets up the end of the show. Because now you've got an angry widow who has an inheritance. That's all I'm going to say. We'll talk more about it when we get to Made in America, but that's all I'm going to say right now.
Because this episode is called Members Only.
Only.
And that's your tie. But what was I about to say?
It's the jacket.
It's the jacket. It's the jacket. But not so. What was I about to go with that, man? You got me thinking about that daggum jacket. So yes, you got me back on track. What we're seeing now, because now we've seen 2 in one episode, and if we go back to long-term parking, we're talking 3 in the course of 3 episodes. You turn state witness against Tony, you end up dead.
Right.
Period. Adriana, obviously by the family's hands. Old buddy started this episode having a heart attack on the treadmill.
On
He
the
had been
treadmill.
snitching for a little bit. So for that to happen to him, he dies. They have no idea he was snitching. But then for Eugene to choose to go out the way that he did because he honestly knew there was nowhere else for him to go. And that's a sad thing to say. You got the family on one side. If they ever find out, you know what they're going to do. The FBI has told you, we are not letting you go. Period. I'll come back and testify. Nah, man. It's not going to happen. It's
That's a
not going
no-go.
to happen. That's a
That's a no-go.
no-go.
All right. Now, I always forget, and it's been a while since I've seen this episode. How do you pronounce the name of the pork store? Is it Satriel? Satriali?
Satrials? I pronounce it
Satrial.
Satrials.
Okay. Agent Dwight Harris visits Satrial's pork store and tells Tony he's been in Pakistan because he was transferred to counterterrorism. He has also contracted a parasite which has given him severe nausea, but has missed the Italian foods offered by Satrial's. Meanwhile, Carmela's construction of her spec house is suspended due to a stop order issued by a building inspector for use of improper lumber. Her father, Hugh DeAngelis, asks about an inspector he used to work with to have him waive the criteria, only to learn that his contact has retired. Carmela asks Tony to see if he can get the stop order lifted, but he puts it off. Artie Bucco is reunited with his estranged wife, Charmaine, and is present at a dinner between Carmelo and Angie Bonpensiero, who have patched up their relationship. Junior's mental state has deteriorated. Tony talks to Dr. Melfi about him and rejects her suggestion that he be put in assisted living. One afternoon, when Junior is particularly agitated, Tony's sister Barbara, as well as Janice and Bobby, are too busy to look after him. When Tony visits the house, Junior mistakes him for a long-dead mobster and shoots him in the abdomen. While Junior hides in a closet upstairs, Tony manages to dial 911 before losing consciousness. Now, that's how you do a season premiere.
Big facts. So much there because it's you got people plotting against our guy being taken out or taking themselves out. You got the first person that we know of to put a hit out on Tony.
Right.
And he actually shot him. But he did it himself. And for Tony, props to that guy. Because shock value being what it is, oh my God, I just got shot. But to get shot in the gut like he did and still be able to get that call off, man. I mean,
right.
that was an endurance match. I imagine he felt like he ran a 5K. Because he was really working. You could hear him. I mean, obviously we're used to hearing Tony breathing heavy, usually when he's having sex, but this was it. So it's as we go back and we watch these again to do these shows, I'm just reminded of some great television. So I am thankful to all the fans that are going along this journey with us, man, because what's coming now, some people say good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to say that the next couple episodes do a great job of giving character arcs to other characters besides Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tony is our guy. So with Tony being shot, you can imagine he's going to be in the hospital, and this is going to give us an opportunity to get a lot of TV time for some other people, especially Vito, which Vito's character really, he has a major arc this season. So
major arc, yeah.
Major arc. So with this happening the way he did and starting this episode off, and he's talking about how, God forbid anything happens to Tony, but in the event that it did, so for this to happen, and then obviously the conversations that are going to be coming from after that, I'm like, yeah, this is some good television. So I'm hoping folks are enjoying this along with us.
Because you also saw, you said it, we visited upon several characters who have major things coming up that are going to be pushed to the forefront. I mean, stuff that seems insignificant, like Carmela's spec house, but the whole reason that she let Tony back in because he's like, I'll front you the money. But now there's something that's like a snag along the way and he pushes it off. What you said with Vito is exactly right. He's already set up. God forbid something happens to Tony, and then what happens at the end of the episode? Something happens to Tony.
Something happens to Tony.
Phil, they are talking about, oh, he's much more calm now. He's more willing to negotiate and do things now that he's acting boss. But you're reminded by Christopher, this guy wanted me dead.
Yeah.
And so now the only person really holding him at bay has just been shot.
1,000%.
Uncle Junior has just shot his nephew.
Yep.
Johnny Sack in prison, but also he's got money woes. So a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff
going on. You got, Bobby coming into his own with his family.
Right.
Still, what this does though with Tony getting shot realistically shows the vacuum that gets created in that family now, because Tony made a lot of speculation as to who he wanted to be as number 2, but because of inconsistencies from Christopher, he never actually establishes a number 2. He showed favoritism to Tony B. He's had an indifferent relationship with Paulie for years. Seal was that one consistent up until the last conversation that they had before that season finale, because that's all we saw. That was one of the last conversations that he and Seal had, and it was a very confrontational situation where he's doubting Seal's faith in his decisions. So, I mean, it's like, who's in charge now? Because Vito would definitely love it to be him. Just saying.
And he's just saying it. And he's saying it over and over again. I remember, I'm the top earner. Yeah.
I'm the top earner now. Look, God forbid.
You got to throw that in there.
Got to.
None of us want anything to happen to Tony.
Then it looks like you're just dancing on his grave. So, but if you say God forbid, that makes it all okay.
Makes it all better. It makes it all better. Well, dude, I think we have set up at least the first part of season 6 big time. There's a lot of stuff coming, folks. You're like, oh, last season they're just going to wrap it up. No, they're going to pack a lot into that last season. But go ahead and plug away, my man. Anything and everything you got.
There's so much that I can't talk about legally, but it's coming. And I'm looking forward to sharing all of it with your audience when I can tell them exactly where to go and find it. So we're getting there, but I found out that I won a community service award today.
Yay!
Which is pretty awesome. So do good, not for the recognition. You do good because it's good to do good. And every once in a while, you get some love, and that's appreciated, and it means a lot, but that's not why we do it. So again, Joey, you and I do this. We want to make sure that every place we go is better when we leave than it was when we got there. So that's how we do it.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. So what we're watching on YouTube, go like and subscribe and share with your family, your friends. Hit the notification bell so you're notified every single time we drop an episode. Look for why we're watching, what we're watching. A very special episode. And also, we said it on there, big things are on the way. Big summer.
Coming.
Big things coming. Big
huge summer.
TJ, as always, thank you, my brother. Appreciate it. Thank you all. We will see you next time.